The vast emptiness of space stretched before the human spaceship Mercy, its pristine white hull adorned with the universal symbol of medical aid glowing softly against the backdrop of distant stars. Captain Elena Santos stood at the bridge's observation window, her dark eyes fixed on the approaching planet of Beta Centauri VI, where thousands suffered from a mysterious plague that had resisted all known treatments. The Mercy represented humanity's finest achievement in medical technology, a deep space hospital ship equipped with laboratories that could synthesize cures for almost any disease encountered. But more than that, it embodied humanity's commitment to healing, a promise made after centuries of warfare had nearly destroyed Earth, to use their technology to save lives rather than take them. "Captain, we're picking up unusual energy signatures," Lieutenant Park reported from his station, fingers dancing across holographic displays. "3 vessels just dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system." Elena turned from the window, her expression carefully neutral despite the concern growing in her chest. The Mercy had encountered many species during its 5-year mission, but something about these readings felt different. "First contact protocols, everyone. Let's show them who we are." The alien ships approached with predatory grace, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight like faceted jewels. They were beautiful, but Elena had learned early in her career that beauty often concealed danger in space. "They're hailing us," Communications Officer Maya Chen announced, her hand steady despite the tension filling the bridge. "On screen," Elena commanded, straightening her white medical uniform. The alien that appeared on the main display was tall and elegant, with iridescent scales and multiple sets of eyes arranged in a pattern that reminded Elena of a crown. "I am Overseer Zaxtel of the Crystalline Hierarchy," it announced in perfect universal standard. "Your vessel is in violation of our space and carrying restricted technology. Power down your systems and prepare for boarding." Elena felt her crew's eyes on her as she stepped forward. "Overseer, I am Captain Elena Santos of the HSS Mercy. We are a medical vessel responding to a distress call from Beta Centauri VI. We carry no weapons, only medical supplies and equipment." "Your medical technology is the violation, Captain." Zaxtol's voice carried an edge of contempt. "The hierarchy maintains order by controlling access to advanced medical care. Your species' insistence on freely providing such care threatens the stability we have maintained for millennia." The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. The hierarchy wasn't just claiming territory. They were actively preventing medical aid from reaching those who needed it. "There are thousands dying on that planet," she argued, struggling to keep her voice level. "Surely we can reach an agreement that—" "There will be no agreement," Zaxtal interrupted. "Your species' naive idealism ends today. You have 2 minutes to comply with our demands, or we will take your ship by force." As the transmission cut off, Elena's mind raced through options. The Mercy carried no conventional weapons. Earth's commitment to peaceful space exploration had been absolute, but they did have other assets: experimental medical technology that could be repurposed, emergency protocols that had never been tested in real conditions, and most importantly, a crew that had sworn to protect life at all costs. "Sound general quarters," she ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Begin emergency patient evacuation procedures to the shielded central core. Dr. Patel, secure the research labs. Lieutenant Park, plot me a course that keeps us between those ships and the planet." "Captain," Maya's voice was quiet but firm, "the hierarchy ships are powering up weapons." Elena nodded, feeling the weight of centuries of human history pressing down on her shoulders. Humanity had chosen peace, had turned their technology toward healing rather than harm. But they had never forgotten the cost of that choice, or what it meant to stand against those who would deny help to those in need. "Send an emergency quantum burst to Earth Command," she commanded. "Full data package on the situation. Then broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Santos of the HSS Mercy. We are a neutral medical vessel protected under Galactic Convention Article 7. Any attack on this ship will be considered a crime against sentient rights. We will not power down, we will not surrender our medical supplies, and we will not abandon those who need our help." The bridge crew's response was immediate and unified. "Aye, Captain." As the alien ships moved to surround them, Alina thought of Earth's history, of the countless times humanity had faced those who thought kindness was weakness. The Mercy carried no weapons, but it carried something far more powerful: the accumulated knowledge of a species that had learned there were things worth dying for, and that sometimes the greatest victory came not from defeating an enemy, but from refusing to become what they wanted you to be. "Hold position," she ordered as the first warning shots flashed past their bow. "Show them who we are." The first impact rocked the Mercy like a hammer blow from the gods. Emergency force fields snapped into place as warning klaxons filled the air with their urgent cry. In the medical bay, Dr. Amit Patel braced himself against a diagnostic unit, watching as his team rushed to secure critical patients and research samples. "Status report." He barked into his comm unit, eyes fixed on the stasis pods containing their most vulnerable patients. "Hull breach in sections 7 through 9. The ship's AI responded calmly. "Medical containment fields holding at 97% efficiency. No casualties reported among patient population." Another blast shook the ship. Through the bay's observation window, Amit watched as crystalline fighters executed precise attack patterns around the Mercy's larger bulk. Their weapons were carefully targeted, designed to disable rather than destroy. The hierarchy wanted their technology intact. "Dr. Patel," Captain Santos's voice came through his comm, steady despite the chaos. "How long do you need to complete the plague vaccine synthesis?" Amit glanced at the quantum processor running simulations on the Beta Centauri plague. 20 minutes for final synthesis, Captain. But that's assuming our power grid holds." "You'll have your 20 minutes, Doctor. Just focus on that cure." In the research lab adjacent to the medical bay, Dr. Sarah Chen was already putting those minutes to use. Her hands flew over holographic controls as she directed the automated systems in their delicate work. 5 years of research, thousands of failed attempts, and finally, they were on the verge of a breakthrough that could save millions. "The hierarchy doesn't just want to stop us," she called to Amit through the lab's connecting door. "They want our research. Their attacks are pushing us away from the planet. They're hurting us." Amit nodded grimly. The hierarchy's tactics revealed their true intentions. This wasn't just about maintaining their control over medical technology. They wanted to steal humanity's advances for themselves. On the bridge, Captain Santos was reaching the same conclusion. "They're not trying to destroy us," she announced to her crew. "They want us intact enough to study." "Lieutenant Park, status of our emergency transponders." "All broadcasting at full power, Captain." But no response from any nearby vessels. The hierarchy must be jamming long-range communications. Alina's jaw tightened. The Mercy carried breakthrough medical technology that could revolutionize treatment across the galaxy. In the wrong hands, it could also be weaponized, turned from healing to harm. The thought of their research being perverted into a tool of control made her blood run cold. Another hit rocked the ship. "Shields at 40%. Lieutenant Park reported. "They're targeting our engine cores." "Reroute power from non-essential systems," Alina ordered. "Keep those medical bays running at all costs." She turned to Maya at communications. "Any response to our distress calls?" "Nothing yet, Captain." "But..." Maya's eyes widened. "I'm picking up something from the planet's surface. Multiple signals. They're calling for help." The main screen filled with desperate transmissions from Beta Centauri VI. Thousands of voices, begging for the aid they'd been promised. The hierarchy's jamming couldn't block short-range communications, and now the crew of the Mercy could hear exactly what their attackers were trying to prevent. In the medical bay, those same transmissions spurred Amit's team to greater efforts. Medical staff worked with practiced efficiency, preparing for the patients they refused to abandon. The plague vaccine was nearly ready, its molecular structure displayed in glowing detail above Sarah's workstation. "Captain," Amit called over the comm. "We've got a new problem. These attacks, they're affecting the stability of our quantum processors. If we lose power to the containment fields..." He didn't need to finish the thought. Without proper containment, the experimental medical nanites they used could multiply out of control. The same technology they used to heal could become a threat to every living thing in the system. Elena processed this information with the calm of someone who had trained for impossible decisions. The hierarchy had them trapped between surrender and catastrophe. But there was another option, one that went against every safety protocol in the book. "Dr. Patel, Dr. Chen," she addressed both scientists. "If we diverted all power to your labs, could you complete the vaccine synthesis before our containment fields fail?" "Yes," Sarah responded immediately. "But Captain, without power to the engines and shields, we'd be defenseless," Elena finished. "I know, but we didn't come all this way to give up when people need us most." The bridge crew exchanged glances. They all understood what their captain was suggesting. Without power to their defensive systems, the hierarchy could easily board them. But they might buy enough time to complete their mission. "The hierarchy thinks they understand us," Elena continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the ship. "They see our dedication to healing as weakness, our refusal to carry weapons as proof of vulnerability. They don't understand that there's strength in choosing to help others, even at great cost to ourselves. They don't understand that some principles are worth any sacrifice." She straightened in her captain's chair, embodying the resolve that had carried humanity from their first hesitant steps into space to this moment. "Divert all non-essential power to the medical labs. We're going to show the hierarchy exactly what human stubbornness looks like." As the lights dimmed across the ship, as the shields weakened and the engines sputtered, the medical labs blazed with renewed energy. In the darkness of space, surrounded by enemies who sought to twist their purpose, the crew of the Mercy stood their ground. They were healers, not warriors, and they would face whatever came next secure in that knowledge. The hierarchy ships moved closer, their crystalline hulls gleaming with predatory intent. But within the Mercy's laboratories, humanity's commitment to healing burned brighter than ever, a light that no force in the galaxy could extinguish. Through the Mercy's viewport, Captain Santos watched as a new fleet of ships dropped out of FTL on the edge of the system. Unlike the crystalline warships of the hierarchy, these vessels were clearly civilian, refugee ships from neighboring systems, drawn by the Mercy's distress beacon. "They're running from the plague," Maya reported, her voice tight with emotion as she processed incoming transmissions. Multiple ships reporting outbreaks aboard. "They picked up our signal. And Captain, there are children on those ships." Elena felt the weight of command settle even heavier on her shoulders. The hierarchy vessels had already begun to move to intercept the refugee fleet, their intentions clear. They wouldn't just deny medical care, they would prevent anyone from seeking it. In the medical bay, Dr. Patel and his team watched the same scene unfold with growing horror. The vaccine synthesis was nearly complete, but their success would mean nothing if they couldn't reach those who needed it. "Captain," Sarah's voice came through the comm, steady despite the tension. "The vaccine is ready. We've managed to stabilize the quantum matrix even with the power fluctuations. We can start production immediately." Before Elena could respond, Overseer Zaxtal's image appeared on the main screen. "Your situation has become untenable, Captain Santos. Surrender now, and we may show mercy to these refugees who so foolishly entered our space." Elena stood, her white uniform gleaming in the emergency lighting. "These people are sick and dying, Overseer. They're no threat to you or your hierarchy. Let us help them." "You still don't understand." Zaxtal's multiple eyes narrowed. "The hierarchy maintains order through control. Access to advanced medical care is a privilege, not a right. Those who cannot earn it do not deserve to survive." The bridge fell silent as the true horror of the hierarchy's philosophy became clear. This wasn't just about power or technology. It was about a fundamental difference in how they viewed life itself. "Lieutenant Park," Elena said quietly, What's the status of our emergency protocols? Online, Captain. But without full power. That's not what I'm asking about. Alina's eyes never left the screen. What's the status of Protocol Omega? Park's eyes widened as he understood. Protocol Omega was theoretical, a last resort measure that had never been tested outside simulations. It would convert their medical nanites into a defensive screen, creating a barrier that could protect both the Mercy and the refugee ships. But the cost would be enormous. It would work. Dr. Chen's voice cut in through the comm. But Captain, it would destroy years of research. We'd have to sacrifice our entire supply of medical nanites. Alina watched as the hierarchy ships moved to surround the refugee fleet. How many doses of the vaccine can you synthesize before we initiate? Maybe enough for half the refugee ships, Amit responded. But without the nanites, we'll lose our ability to produce more. Another choice. Another impossible decision. Save some now and lose the ability to save more later, or risk losing everyone trying to save their technology. You have 1 minute to power down your systems, Zaxtal announced. After that, we will begin eliminating the refugee ships one by one until you comply. Alina looked around at her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. Humanity spent centuries learning the cost of putting power before compassion, she said. We chose a different path not because we were weak, but because we were strong enough to break that cycle. She turned back to the screen. Overseer, I want you to understand something about humans. We've had the technology to build weapons of unimaginable power for generations. We chose not to. We had the ability to conquer and dominate, but we chose to heal instead. Not because we couldn't fight, but because we learned there are better ways to show strength. Her finger hovered over the control that would initiate Protocol Omega. But we also learned that sometimes you have to sacrifice everything you've built to do what's right. A noble speech, Zaxtal sneered, but ultimately meaningless. You are one ship, alone and powerless. What can you possibly do? Helena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We can show you why the galaxy's elder races welcomed humanity without a probationary period. Why they looked at our history, at our potential for both creation and destruction, and decided we were ready. She pressed the control. We can show you why they were right. Throughout the ship, medical nanites responded to new programming. Technology designed to heal began to transform, creating a shimmering barrier that expanded outward from the Mercy. As it reached the refugee ships, their hulls began to glow with the same protective field. All ships, this is Captain Santos. Alina broadcast on all frequencies. Form up behind us. We're taking you to Beta Centauri VII, and the hierarchy is going to let us pass. The hierarchy ships opened fire, but their weapons dissipated harmlessly against the nanite shield. The same technology that could repair cellular damage at the molecular level was now preventing any hostile energy from reaching their hulls. Impossible, Zaxtal whispered. Your medical technology. You turned it into a weapon. No, Alina corrected. We turned it into a shield. There's a difference. One you might want to think about. She turned to her helm officer. Take us in, full speed. Let's get these people the help they need. As the Mercy led the refugee fleet toward Beta Centauri VII, the hierarchy ships fell back, their weapons useless against the protective screen. They had expected to find weakness in humanity's dedication to healing. Instead, they had discovered that the same principles that drove humans to help others also made them the most dangerous when those others were threatened. In the medical bay, Amit and Sarah watched years of research dissolve into the defensive screen around their ship. But as they began distributing the precious doses of vaccine they'd managed to synthesize, they knew they'd made the right choice. They would rebuild their research. They would find new ways to heal. But first, they would save everyone they could reach. News traveled faster than light in the connected age of galactic civilization. Within hours of the Mercy's stand against the hierarchy, quantum communications networks blazed with the story, not just of the confrontation, but of what followed. The images spread across the galaxy. A human medical ship, surrounded by refugee vessels, breaking through a hierarchy blockade. But it was what happened on Beta Centauri VII that truly shook the foundations of galactic society. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the planet's main medical center, watching as humans and aliens worked side by side to distribute the vaccine. They had enough doses for the most critical cases, and the planet's own medical facilities were already producing more using the templates they'd provided. The death rate is dropping. A local doctor reported. Their chitinous faceplates shifting in what Sarah had learned was an expression of joy. We've never seen anything like this response rate. Through the windows, she could see more ships arriving. Medical vessels from a dozen different species, each answering the call that the Mercy had sent out. The hierarchy's attempt to control access to medical care had backfired spectacularly, inspiring an unprecedented cooperative effort. On the Mercy's bridge, Captain Santos was dealing with the diplomatic fallout. The holographic projections of various galactic representatives filled the air around her, their voices overlapping in a cascade of responses. The hierarchy's actions cannot be allowed to stand, the Volith ambassador declared, their bioluminescent patterns flashing with indignation. Their embargo on medical technology violates at least 7 galactic conventions. We have long suspected their interference in humanitarian efforts, another representative added, but never had proof until now. Elena listened to the debates with careful attention, but her focus remained on the reports coming in from the surface. Every life saved was a victory that mattered more than any political discussion. In orbit, the hierarchy ships maintained their distance, watching as more vessels arrived from across the sector. Their crystalline hulls seemed somehow less brilliant now, their apparent power diminished not by force, but by the simple act of beings coming together to help one another. Lieutenant Park monitored the communications from his station. "Captain, you should see this," he called, bringing up a series of transmissions on the main screen. "We're getting signals from within hierarchy space." The messages came from dozens of worlds, each telling the same story. Of populations denied basic medical care, of suffering enforced as a means of control, of a regime that had maintained power by deciding who was worthy of survival. But now that control was slipping, the Mercy's act of defiance had shown that another way was possible. "Message from Overseer Zaxtel," Maya announced, surprise evident in her voice. "They're requesting a meeting." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Put them through." The Overseer's image appeared, but something had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been uncertainty. "Captain Santos," they began, "the Hierarchy Council has reconsidered its position." "Have they?" Elena's voice was neutral. "We have observed your distribution of medical aid," Zaxtel continued. "The efficiency, the lack of discrimination in who receives treatment. It is not what we expected. Because we're helping everyone, not just those you deem worthy. Because it appears to be strengthening these systems, not weakening them." Zaxtal's multiple eyes focused intently on Elena. "Our philosophy has always been that unrestricted access to advanced medical care would lead to chaos, to the collapse of social order. But what we're seeing is the opposite." Elena finished. "When people don't have to fear being denied care, when they know help is available regardless of their status, they're free to focus on building something better." In the medical bay, Dr. Patel was reviewing the latest data from the surface when a new alert caught his attention. "Captain," he called over the comm, "we're getting some interesting readings from the hierarchy ships." "Explain." "Their hulls. The crystalline structure isn't just aesthetic. It's a form of biological technology. And if I'm reading this correctly, they're sick." Elena turned back to Zaxtel's image, understanding dawning. "Your own people are suffering, aren't they? The same control you use on others, you use on your own population." For the first time, the Overseer's composure cracked completely. The Council believed it necessary, that the fear of being denied treatment would maintain order. But now our own medical technology has stagnated. We've spent so long controlling access to basic care that we've fallen behind in actual innovation. Elena was silent for a long moment, weighing choices and consequences. Finally, she spoke. "Send us your medical data. All of it. Let's see what we can do. You would help us." Zaxtal's surprise was genuine. "After what we did." "That's who we are," Elena replied simply. "It's who we chose to be, a long time ago. We help where we can, heal where we can, and hope that maybe next time, you'll choose to do the same." As the transmission ended, Elena looked out at the growing fleet of medical ships surrounding Beta Centauri VI. Humanity had entered the galactic stage carrying not weapons of war, but tools of healing. Today had proven the wisdom of that choice. In the planet's hospitals, in orbital medical stations, and on ships throughout the system, the work continued. The Mercy's sacrifice of their advanced nanite technology had been costly, but the response it inspired was building something far more valuable. A network of cooperation that crossed species and political boundaries, united by the simple belief that everyone deserved care. Dr. Chen, watching another group of patients receive their vaccines, smiled as she thought about the research they'd lost. "We'll rebuild it," she said to no one in particular. "And next time, we'll make it better." 6 months after the confrontation at Beta Centauri VI, the HSS Mercy floated in high orbit above Earth. Its hull, once pristine white, bore the scars of its encounter with the hierarchy, each mark a testament to choices made and principles upheld. Captain Elena Santos stood in the ship's newly rebuilt medical bay, watching as Dr. Chen calibrated their latest generation of medical nanites. The technology was different from what they'd sacrificed. In many ways, better. The designs incorporated insights from a dozen species, each contributing their own understanding of healing. "The latest trial results just came in from the hierarchy worlds," Sarah reported, her eyes bright with excitement. "The new treatments are showing a 97% success rate. Their crystalline biology actually helps distribute the nanites more efficiently than we'd anticipated." Elena nodded, remembering the look in Overseer Zaxtal's eyes when they'd first delivered the treatments to hierarchy space. Pride and prejudice had given way to something else. Understanding. Sometimes, the greatest victories came not from defeating an enemy, but from turning them into partners in something better. "Message from Earth Command." Lieutenant Park's voice came through the comm. "The Galactic Medical Exchange Program is ready to launch. They're waiting for your speech, Captain." Elena made her way to the bridge, where her crew had assembled. Through the main viewport, she could see the gathered ships. Medical vessels from every major species in known space, including 3 of the crystalline ships that had once threatened them. The communications array activated, projecting her words to the assembled fleet and to watching populations across the galaxy. Elena took a moment to study the faces of her crew, seeing in them the same determination that had carried them through their darkest hours. 6 months ago, the HSS Mercy faced a choice, she began. "We could surrender our principles to save ourselves, or risk everything to defend them. In making that choice, we discovered something remarkable. We weren't alone." On screens throughout the ship, images played of the aftermath of Beta Centauri VI. Medical ships arriving from across the galaxy, species that had been historical enemies working together to distribute vaccines, the beginning of change that no one had thought possible. The hierarchy believed that controlling access to medical care was necessary for maintaining order. They weren't the only ones. Throughout history, on Earth and elsewhere, those in power have tried to use healing as a weapon to decide who deserves to live and who doesn't. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across her bridge crew. "But there's another way. What we discovered at Beta Centauri VI wasn't just about medicine or technology. It was about choice, about deciding what kind of civilization we want to be." In the medical bay, Dr. Patel watched the speech while preparing the Mercy's newest medical staff, a mixed crew of humans and aliens, including a young hierarchy medical officer whose crystalline features caught the light as they carefully studied human treatment protocols. "The Galactic Medical Exchange Program represents more than just sharing knowledge," Elena continued. "It represents a commitment, a promise that we make not just to our own people, but to all people. That when you need help, it will be there. That healing is not a privilege to be earned, but a right to be protected. Through quantum networks, her words reached the farthest corners of known space. On Beta Centauri VII, now a thriving medical research center, doctors of a dozen species paused in their work to listen. In hierarchy space, where centuries of control were giving way to a new understanding of strength through cooperation, crystalline beings watched with their multiple eyes. Humanity entered the galactic community carrying not weapons, but medical supplies. Not threats, but offers of help. Some saw this as weakness. What they didn't understand was that it takes more strength to heal than to harm, more courage to save a life than to take one. On her screen, Elena could see the faces of those watching. Humans and aliens, united not by fear or force, but by the simple desire to help others. She thought of how far they'd come, of the choices that had led them here. Today, as we launch this new initiative, we carry forward that understanding. The HSS Mercy lost its advanced medical nanites defending refugees, but what we gained was far more valuable. Proof that when we stand together, when we choose to help rather than harm, we create something stronger than any weapon, more powerful than any empire. The assembled ships began to move into formation, preparing for their first mission under the new program. Elena felt a fierce pride as she watched them, not just in humanity's role in making this happen, but in the shared commitment they all displayed. "We are healers," she concluded, her voice carrying the weight of conviction earned through trial. "Not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to choose a better way. Not because we cannot fight, but because we understand that the greatest victories come not from defeating others, but from lifting them up." As her words faded, the fleet jumped to FTL in perfect synchronization, each ship carrying the same mission, the same promise. The Mercy led them, its scarred hull gleaming in the light of Earth's sun, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful changes come not from showing force, but from showing compassion. In the medical bay, Sarah Chen looked at their new nanite designs, at the improvements made possible by collaboration with species they had once faced as enemies. "We lost our original technology," she mused to Amit, "but look at what we built instead." Amit nodded, understanding that she wasn't just talking about the nanites. Throughout known space, barriers were falling. Species that had hoarded medical knowledge were sharing it. Those who had used healing as a weapon were learning to use it as a bridge. The galaxy was changing, one saved life at a time. And it had started with a single ship refusing to back down, not because it was powerful, but because it was right. The HSS Mercy streaked through space, carrying its crew of healers to their next mission. They had learned that humanity's greatest strength lay not in the weapons they chose not to build, but in the help they chose to offer. In the end, that had proven more powerful than any fleet, more lasting than any empire. They were healers, and that was enough.